Hi, Peter.
Hi,
Could you introduce yourself shortly, briefly?
my name is Peter Sollich. I'm a Microsoft software developer based in Munich, Germany. I have been with the company since '98. In other words, that's almost 21 years now. And I have been working on the .NET framework from the very beginning. So I've been with the team for almost those 21 years.
And you are one of the core GC developer?
Not really. I've done some optimizations in GC. Later on, I've moved on to developing a profiler that allowed people to profile their allocations, because we figured that most people were now allocating too much memory, and it wanted to enable them to figure out where and why.
Could you briefly summarize your talk?
Well, basically, I explained how GC works today, and then I explained how things are changing and what we're doing to accommodate those changes. And finally, I talked about where to start an investigation into GC performance. You know, what tool would you use? What different tools would you use for different purposes, and so on. And finally, I pointed people at various resources where they can get more information.
What is the most challenging in your day-to-day job in working with GC?
I think there are two things. One is to validate performance improvements in real-world scenarios, because those real-world scenarios are typically difficult to set up and run. And secondly, similarly, validating that I'm not destroying correctness doing performance fixes. So keeping those two things really solid is, I think, very important, but also very challenging, because right now there's so much software built on .NET that it's really important to keep everything of it really running reliably and, you know, at high performance.
Okay. What are the future focus areas in terms of GC?
One thing is to keep reducing GC pause times. We have some opportunities, especially with server GC, to make things better. Like, for example, balancing the work between different heaps. It's also to work better with future machines that have more cores and more memory. And finally, one important area is also to enable developers to express better what they care about, whether they care about reducing memory consumption, whether they care about overall pause time, or whether they care about keeping individual pause times small. So trying to express that preference in a good way is something that is not easy to do, to express, you know, what's most important to you, and, you know, what amount of compromise do you take then with other performance metrics.
I'm curious about how are you testing the GC? Do you have any, I don't know, maybe reference application or?
There is a relatively simple application that we use for testing, and that allows you to trim certain parameters, like how much memory gets allocated, how many pointers there are between objects, how many objects survive into generation 2, and so on. And this allows us, or how much pinning is going on, and this allows us to test all the basic mechanisms within GC. In real-world scenarios, it's typically true that those features won't get exercised quite as heavily, and so you won't see performance regressions that quickly. With this app, all it does is allocate and, you know, try to stress GC, and so it's better suited to find problems quickly.
And last but not least, you said that you work for Microsoft for 20 years, and I know it's a remote job. So how is it? It's 20 years as a remote developer?
Oh, mostly it works fine. Also because 4 or 5 times a year I fly to Redmond and make sure I meet people face to face and sit in meetings and so on. Sometimes I'm a little bit annoyed because of the time difference of 9 hours. It means I have a lot of meetings in the evenings, and you know, sometimes that cuts into family life, and that's not so great. But you know, for me, I'm a person who likes to work by himself mostly. And so it works for me, especially because I work from my home office, and so my commute is ideal.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.